that did look shorter.
If you express to someone that your favorite Pixar movie is Cars, or even say that it's not that bad, most people's initial reaction is to cringe and then debunk the world of the entire film as to why you shouldn't like it. Enter the debunking dude. Like, how do cars even exist? What happened to humans? They had to exist at some point, right? As the reason cars exist is because humans invented them, so where did they all go? The Pope exists in the Cars world, so does that mean that Car Jesus died for our sins? What do cars eat? How are cars born? Why are there animal cars if they don't need to eat animals? What differentiates animal cars from humanoid cars? Rich cars have sentient boats that they ride on. How does that work? There's a crane in the middle of the ocean that's sentient on an oil rig. How did it get there? And was it just born to do that job? So many unanswered questions, so much debunking, and so little time. And honestly, if you have the answer to any of these questions, let me know what they are down below. But honestly, the world building is what makes Cars, I think, so much fun. And I think it's okay to unironically like Cars. And this video isn't a video that is going to tell you that Cars is actually a secret cinematic masterpiece that you've been sleeping on, but rather that it's just a good movie, it's fine. But how at the time of its release, and even up until now, people kind of shit on it, for lack of a better word, when in reality it's a lot better than I think most people give it credit for. I was inspired to make this video not only because I rewatched the entire Cars franchise, but also because someone left me a comment on my Barbie video about how when you express to people that you like Cars, people tend to think that you're not that smart or clearly brainwashed by Disney marketing, as if buying into other Disney Pixar ventures like Ratatouille is somehow more radical or at least intellectual. But again, like I said, I think Cars, the 2006 film, and even the subsequent films are a lot better than most people give them credit for, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, a film about cars was actually conceived in 1998 after production on A Bug's Life wrapped, and A Bug's Life was the studio's second film. The working title was The Yellow Car, which would be about the titular character, a yellow car, who was electric and living in a gas-guzzling world. The story was compared to The Ugly Duckling, however the film was discarded in favor of Toy Story 2. The studio head at the time, John Lasseter, who has since been outed from the company due to sexual harassment allegations, would rework the Cars story after taking a cross-country road trip, and the film would debut in 2006. The new story was a love letter to old Americana and car culture. A famous race car, Lightning McQueen, voiced by Owen Wilson, would end up in a forgotten town called Radiator Springs on Route 66 and learn to slow down and appreciate life. He'd also meet famous race car Doc Hudson, voiced by the late Paul Newman, an ex-race car who was forced into retirement after a serious injury, and the industry and his team decided to move on without him. From Doc, he'd learn humility and hone in on his craft. He'd also meet Sally, a Porsche, who actually has a spot in the Porsche Museum, and who also has a tramp stamp, I guess. She later becomes McQueen's love interest. Lastly, he'd meet a rusty tow truck named Mater, played by then viral TV celebrity Larry the Cable Guy, who later becomes McQueen's best friend, as he likes McQueen for who he is, not because he's famous or wants something from him. Honestly, the story itself is quite simple. A race car learns humility, but the heart of the film lies in not only the importance of small businesses and preserving our past and learning to slow down, but also in the side characters and how fun they are. You have the hippie car who loves clean energy, the old stick-in-the-mud cars, the two Italian cars who have some of the funniest lines, especially when they learn McQueen is a race car, but not an internationally famous Formula One car, but just famous in the US and doesn't know any Ferraris.
I'm in the Piston Cup! What?
Luigi follow only the fries.
We love jokes that poke fun of US centricism. I also really love Flo, portrayed by Jennifer Lewis, and her V8 Cafe, and her boyfriend Ramon, portrayed by Cheech Marin, also has a really cool design. The team behind the film at least tried to bring some diversity into the Cars universe. And overall, it's just a really sweet movie. I think a lot of people like to mock Cars because the world doesn't make any sense, but like I said in the beginning, that's part of the fun. Thankfully, I think more people are actually studying the story and film itself nowadays, rather than just debunking the world and calling that critique. I honestly wish I could have been a fly in the wall in the visual development room when they were creating the Cars universe, where the artists were told they could just create a world around cars and not think about the consequences. Like, that must have been so much fun, especially when it came to the second movie with the likes of the Car Pope. Another reason I think people look down on Cars is because of the popular criticism that it was just made to sell toys. It's just a shameless cash grab. Unlike Toy Story, of course, which is about actual toys. But historically, 2006 was a big year for Pixar as a studio, as they were slowly being more and more controlled by Disney. So it was fair for audiences and fans to worry about Pixar becoming corporate during this time. Originally, Disney simply distributed Pixar films. As time went on, however, and as Pixar became more and more successful, their relationship became very strained, especially after Toy Story 2, and from 1999 to 2006, the year Cars would come out, Disney and Pixar had tried and failed to create an amicable agreement that would let Disney control and profit more from the studio rather than just getting a distribution cut. Disney ultimately agreed on January 24, 2006 to buy Pixar for approximately $7.4 billion in an all-stock deal. Following Pixar shareholder approval, the acquisition was completed on May 5th, 2006. Cars would debut on June 9th, 2006, but was not produced by Disney. Disney simply marketed the film and distributed it. However, in 2007, Ratatouille would be the first Disney Pixar film in that Disney produced the film as well. And after the 2006 acquisition, Disney fully owned Pixar. And this, I think, made people, a lot of, Pixar fans, worried that the company was losing its free spirit, creative roots, and being controlled by the mouse, which honestly is a fair concern. Cars had a lot to live up to, especially coming out around the time of the acquisition, and since Pixar was known for their golden touch and never failing up until this point. Their first 6 films, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, were and continue to be people's favorite films, not only for children, but for adults. They were massive box office juggernauts, adored by critics and audiences. It seemed that up until this point, that Pixar could do no wrong. That was until Cars, which people liked at the time, or at least thought was okay. It had a stellar cast, but was definitely more for kids. And I think that a lot of people saw it as just quote-unquote fluff. And again, like I said in the beginning of this video, this isn't to say that Cars is some sort of hidden masterpiece, but also it's not necessarily just fluff. It's just, a simple movie, and I think that simple movies should just be able to exist. Cars, of course, was successful as it became, one of Pixar's franchise films. It made a lot of money, but was it as respected and seen as carrying the same heart as a story like Finding Nemo? Probably not. But honestly, we wouldn't get into bad Pixar movie territory until Brave in 2012. And I know a lot of people hate Brave, but I didn't mind it that much when I first saw it, and even upon rewatch. But, maybe I'm missing something. Let me know, what you think of Brave down in the comments below. And though early Pixar movies, are great, I think the best ones actually came out after the acquisition. WALL-E, Ratatouille, and Up are just as good, if not better, than A Bug's Life or even Toy Story. Honestly, I think Toy Story is a little overrated. And I think that the later Pixar movies that were made after the acquisition actually gave Pixar the reputation of movies that will make you cry. But that's just my opinion. I do think that Finding Nemo and The Incredibles are in a class of their own, though, so please don't come at me.
That's my opinion!
And though Cars may be weaker in comparison in terms of does it make you cry? That doesn't mean that it's a bad Pixar movie or just a bad movie. It's just different. Again, we wouldn't see bad Pixar until Brave, A Good Dinosaur, and Incredibles 2. In general, Pixar had a lot to live up to in 2006, and at one point they were going to disappoint. That's just going to happen. It's inevitable. And Cars seemed to be the perfect opportunity for critics to cue the studio's quote-unquote downfall, but the critics would later be proven wrong until they weren't. So Cars 2 came out in 2011 and is definitely worse than the first one by a lot. Firstly, the film, for some reason, doesn't follow Lightning McQueen and continue his journey, but rather follows Mater, portrayed by Larry the Cable Guy, which is very odd considering I don't think that he was as popular as when the original film debuted. It's also no longer about hometown roots and racing, but about espionage and spies. And this brings me to one of the biggest problems, or at least my biggest problem with Cars 2, and that is the plot is almost impossible to follow. I've seen this movie multiple times and I still don't really get the plot. So apparently the lemon cars want to prove that sustainable fuel is bad because they're sick of being made fun of for being dependent on fossil fuels, and they don't want to go obsolete or make the switch. So they hatch a plan to make alternative fuel look bad, but also create a sustainable good fuel that does work and cars can use, but also can't use under certain circumstances. It's just all very confusing and convoluted. Like, can they safely use all or not? I think making alternative fuel look bad in the movie sends the wrong message to the audience, even if it's done by the villains, because in the end, it seems as though the fuel is still too volatile and is dangerous. They do have a short line from the hippie car about how alternative fuel is good and how the lemons are giving it a bad name, but it's a blink and you miss it line. And having the alternative fuel that's actually secretly bad, but for the most part is taken like at face value as being good, but also secretly being bad, I think sends a very confusing message to the audience. But the heart of the second movie lies with Mater, who was just a hillbilly in the first movie, but in the second movie is coded to be neurodivergent. He doesn't understand social cues, and because of that, McQueen is embarrassed of him and actually has to be persuaded by Sally to even bring him along on his, Formula One journey. And honestly, McQueen is pretty vain and kind of an ass in this movie, even though he learned in the first movie not to be like that. But okay, I guess we're doing the Disney sequel thing where the character learns the lesson from the first movie. Anyway, McQueen is embarrassed publicly by Mater, who again doesn't know how to really react in like social and public situations, or can, read the room. And because of this, the cars who are spying on the evil lemon cars think that he's some sort of mastermind genius and that his quote-unquote stupidity is just a cover-up. Because in addition to not being able to read the room, Mater has a very specific knowledge set, which makes it look to neurotypical people that he's just playing dumb, and that him being quote-unquote stupid is an act. There's actually a really sad scene in the film where Mater realizes that the cars he thought were his friends talk about what a good show he's putting on as a quote-unquote dumb tow truck. He says quietly, "You think I'm stupid?" And then they learn that he's not a spy. He again just has a very specific knowledge set about spare and old parts, and that his inability to act in social situations and read people isn't an act or a disguise. It's who he really is. In addition, his affect is also real. That's how he really sounds and talks. And I think it's really good that the cars around him need to learn to accept Mater for who he is, and that McQueen apologizes for being ashamed of his best friend. But at the same time, it's annoying how they do this thing where Mater is only valuable because of his specific knowledge set, and that his disability actually makes him quote-unquote cooler and better than his neurotypical counterparts. He can't just be. His existence is only tolerated and respected because he makes a good spy and saves the day, even though he doesn't even realize what he's doing until the end of the film. Unlike Monsters U with Mike Wazowski, where he learns that he is different and can't fit in and isn't scary and that's okay and that he's valid anyway, Mater is only valuable and valued in the film because of what he can offer, because he saves the day. But of course, it's not my place if you, should feel offended by him, or, if you really identify with him and like him. Heck, I still really like Mater, and I like how he does realize that people are making fun of him and that they have to apologize to him. As for the third and final Cars film, it came out in 2017 and was seen as quote-unquote redeeming the Cars franchise as we go back to the original film's roots, or roots, if you will. In this one, we not only learn about the history of racing, but we also learn about gender inequality and how that also exists in, the world of cars. McQueen is being outraced and outperformed by new racers who focus more on stats and the latest training equipment. He then, in turn, is losing his edge and eventually is taken under the wing by this sleek CEO who promises to put him back on top. McQueen meets his new trainer, Cruz Ramirez, portrayed by Cristela Alonso, who tries to help him all she can, but he's too stubborn to listen. They end up having a falling out, but then Cruz reveals how her actual dream was to become a race car and how McQueen is her hero, or at least was. But she soon learned that the racing world was hostile to not only her gender, but also, her ethnicity. She wasn't welcome in that world and gave up before she even started, as she was made to be too intimidated to even try. And so she became a trainer. In the end, McQueen decides to train Cruz after learning that Doc's life didn't end after his racing career ended. And in fact, some of his best years were as McQueen's coach. Before the big race at the end, we meet an old female race car named Louise Nash, portrayed by Margot Martindale, as well as other older race cars from Doc's era, and learn about how gendered racing used to be and still is. So McQueen helps Cruz win the big race, and Cruz gets backed by Dynaco, as corporate sponsors are really important in the racing world. Ironically, the quote-unquote liberal and sleek CEO, who's supposedly forward-thinking and who signed McQueen and was seen as a good guy in the beginning, turns out to be a huge sexist, whereas the down-to-earth country folks of Dynaco are more humble and not, as sexist, I guess. Though people tend to see Cars in need of redemption after the second one was totally weird compared to, past Pixar films, which are usually more emotional and more adult, I honestly like the second one more than the third for, just being so different and out there. The third one honestly bored me, whereas the second one at least had a mystery and expanded the world building, and also, had cool spy gadgets, but for cars. The third one was supposed to bring us back to reality and be more gritty and real, but this is a movie, about cars. I think I'd rather see an out there movie rather than a film that plays into Pixar's established trope of being deep and emotional and heavy. However, I also get why they did this, as the studio probably felt pressured to quote unquote do better after the backlash the second one faced for being really out there with the tone. But honestly, in hindsight, Cars 2, though convoluted, is still fun, and I don't think I could say that the third one was fun. On the other hand, I do get that girls should see themselves in the Cars universe and feel important and see themselves as more than just, girlfriends of the main boy cars. But Sally and Holly always seemed like, autonomous characters to me, apart from the men in their lives. If anything, I don't know why they didn't make like a Sally spin-off movie for the third film. I'd love to see a sequel about her, as they do talk about her backstory as a lawyer in the big city before she moves, to Radiator Springs. But in all, the Cars movies are fun, even the third one, even though it was kind of heavy-handed. Though the Cars movies don't fit into the usual Pixar fare of, making you cry, I think that's okay. Not all Pixar movies are going to win everyone over all the time. Some are going to be lighter than others or weirder than others, and that's okay. Because, in the end, that's what art is. And what art should be. It should be experimental and different. And, art is about taking risks, trying new things. And not everyone will like what you create, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't worth trying. So that's it for this one. I hope that, this video helps you see Cars in a new light and maybe rethink the movies, because they actually aren't really that bad, even though at the time of their release and even now, a lot of people see them as not being as good as other Pixar films when they're just as decent, in my opinion. But let me know what you think down below, and if you like this video, please go and support my Patreon. The link will be here. Shout out to my patrons. They help support this channel. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.